Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. And I must say, it is a good day to be a Vikings fan. In today's video, I'm going to do a relentless rundown of the Packers against Minnesota at US Bank Stadium. We're going to look at the offenses and defenses from both teams, talk about some of the key plays, what I really liked from what I saw, and there was plenty of that, and some of the things that I maybe have concerns or questions about moving forward. And before we get into all of that fun, please consider dropping a like on the channel, hit the subscribe button. Every single sub helps. And all my current subscribers out there already, thank you, thank you, thank you. I could not do any of this without you guys. With that done, let's get into this relentless rundown. I'm going to start by talking about Minnesota's offense, and there was obviously plenty to like about what went on. They looked spectacular against a defense that, for my money, is going to be a top 10 unit at the end of the year. Green Bay's defense really has top 5 upside. They have stars at every single level. And so for Minnesota to be able to come out in week 1 after really not playing hardly at all in the preseason, I know that that was a big storyline. It was really good to see they were firing on all cylinders, especially through the air. And my man, Justin Jet Jefferson, who absolutely dominated the Packers secondary. Something that I really loved that Minnesota did was have a ton of pre-snap movement. They got Jefferson motioning from side to the field. And it really helped, I think, not only him, but also Kirk Cousins be able to see what kind of defenses the Packers were in, and then be able to run the routes, pick the plays that were going to be able to take advantage of it. I think that Kevin O'Connell did a masterful job on his game plan. He had this team ready to play, and he really went after the Green Bay Packers in places that he felt that they were vulnerable. Now, a lot of people, myself included, would not have thought that it was going to be the secondary nearly as much. I mean, Jair Alexander coming back, you had to think that he was going to be a problem, at least at times, for Jefferson. That was just not the case. And that pre-snap motion really kept, I think, the Packers off balance, did not allow them to get comfortable in what they were trying to do. And then once it got out of hand and Jefferson was unstoppable in the first and second quarters, you could see how it affected the rest of the defense. Gotta talk about the quarterback. Captain Kirk was really, really solid. He had a QBR of 81, a 119 QB rating, and he took only 1 sack. So no turtling in the backfield for Cousins in this game. He threw for 277 yards, a pair of scores, and as usual, did not turn it over. One of the things that I think I saw as far as improvement from Cousins was the pocket presence and awareness in this game. He looked really good, being able to kind of shift through it for the most part. Now, of course, there were times where I wished he would have got rid of it a little sooner, maybe even just thrown it away. But I was very happy overall with what Kirk brought to the table. He looked really comfortable in this new offense and confident in the balls that he was delivering. And that makes the rest of the team better. And Minnesota obviously was on this night. Now, the other thing that stood out to me that I really enjoyed from the Vikings is something that I've been asking for the last couple years. Mike Zimmer in the dark age ways did not want this. And it was the shifting from Dalvin Cook to Alexander Mattison a little more frequently. Madison has a great skill set. He does a lot of the things well that Dalvin Cook does well. And so to be able to split the load a little bit more, it kept both Dalvin and Alexander fresh. And we saw, even against an elite front from Green Bay, they were able to be pretty efficient on their rushes, and they were able to keep the team on schedule, which was very important against a great defense like Green Bay. Cook had 20 carries in this game, and Madison only had 8. So it wasn't like Madison was taking a giant slice of the pie, but it was enough that Cook looked really good every time he touched the ball. He was as dangerous as possible. And as a Vikings fan, that is exactly what you want. And it allowed both of these guys to average 4.5 yards a carry, which again, against this elite Packers defense, you couldn't really ask for much more than that. Of course, in the wide receiver room, it was all about Jefferson. He completely dominated Green Bay in the first half. He gave me flashes of Randy Moss back in the day. It was a beautiful thing to watch. He was really open on some of those plays. Now, I'm not sure if that was a breakdown by the Green Bay defense, maybe just the way that things were schemed out, or he is just that good. It's probably a combination of the three, but it was so fun to watch him get out into space and make plays. I honestly thought that he had 3 touchdowns. The one in the end of the first half, I really thought that Kevin O'Connell should have challenged it because it looked like he double tapped with that one foot. But we still take the points on the field goal and ended up winning, so it didn't cost him. But that was an opportunity, I think, where maybe O'Connell is a little bit hesitant as a brand new head coach to make a challenge there and lose it that early. If you're against a division rival and you have a chance to put more points on the board, for me, you have to challenge it. So that was maybe an opportunity from O'Connell and the Vikings offense that they could have done more with. But outside of that, they looked really good. We're in Minnesota, so we have to talk about the kicking game. And Greg the Leg got it done. He hit that big 56-yarder early to extend the lead. He was 3 for 3. That is all you can ask for as a Viking fan. It was good to see the ball go through the uprights, especially when we look at the rest of what happened in week 1. There were a ton of gimme kicks that did not go in. We had a couple doinkers off the uprights. So Minnesota, no problems in that regard, and you love to see it. I also really liked the aggressiveness from Minnesota, especially early on when they went for it on that 4th down to get Jefferson's first touchdown. It helped set the tone for this team and show that we are going to go out and try and put points on the board. We're not going to sit back and take the 3, which was so common in the Mike Zimmer era. I love to see O'Connell separating himself from that garbage and nonsense. Get into the age of analytics where touchdowns are huge and they matter. And when you're in a home field against a division rival, you want to get that momentum early on. The Vikings were able to do that, and I think that really helped turn the table for this team as they moved on and forward into the game. Let's shift now to the defense in Minnesota. And they were really good. They were able to generate pressure pretty often against Aaron Rodgers in that front, but they didn't have to bring a lot of extra guys to do it. Minnesota blitzed on just 14% of the plays in this game, which is absolutely crazy to me when you saw how much they were in his face. It seemed like the Vikings were really content to make the Packers earn every single yard. They gave up a good amount underneath. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't love it when it was happening in the game, but I do understand the game plan. They were not gonna give up that big play. Now, well, I will say this. Right off the bat, that 75-yard bomb to Christian Watson, obviously that can't happen, and that could have shifted the game, the momentum, and the way this played out. So that was really scary to see as a Vikings fan, but to be able to get through that, obviously with the drop, and then kind of button down after that was a beautiful sight. The combination of Danielle Hunter and Zadarius Smith is a force to be reckoned with. They were all up in Rodgers' grill for the majority of the day, and Minnesota also was really smart in being able to rotate some ends in to once again keep the players fresh. DJ Wonnum had a huge sack, and he was one of the guys in there that was helping to keep Hunter and Smith, give them a rest. That was just an awesome thing to see. Minnesota had 4 sacks. Overall, they made life miserable for Rodgers. On the back end, I don't care how old he is or what you say, Harrison Smith still has it. He was absolutely masterful on the back end. He picked off Aaron Rodgers on a really athletic play, and then he was also able to stuff A.J. Dillon at the goal line. I'm not sure how many safeties can make that play, but I guarantee you it is not very many of them. When the guy has 2 tree trunks as thighs, he is not easy to bring down in close, and Harrison was able to do that. So Hitman Harry, shout out to you. You balled out, and I love to see it. As far as the rest of the secondary for Minnesota, it's kind of hard to evaluate, if I'm being completely honest. And I say this with the utmost respect it's due to the Green Bay Packer room, but the Vikings had no issues with the nobodies in Green Bay's wide receiver room. Their secondary was just fine. There was not much that was threatening them for almost the entirety of the game. Green Bay pretty much was trying to do as much as they could on the boundaries as possible. Not a lot over the middle. They were trying to get their players out in space, and it didn't really work. Minnesota, outside of that big initial bomb to Watson that we talked about, didn't make any big mistakes. They didn't leave any giant plays open for Green Bay to take advantage of and get some momentum back. They kept things in front of them, and they were very sound in being able to bring offensive men down. The stop at the goal line in the first quarter for Minnesota, I felt was the turning point of this game. Green Bay had just saw the Vikings convert their own 4th down in deep, and so they went for one of their own. And to be able to get that stop, you could just kind of feel, as a fan, the building and the emotion. Get behind this team. Gotta love the physicality, because Green Bay up front, even with the injuries that they had to the offensive line, this is still an above average unit. Now to the Green Bay offense, which was basically completely and utterly centered around the running backs, which is kind of what we expected, especially after the injury to Allen Lazard and him being unable to go. Once that drop happened with Christian Watson, you could almost see it in Rodgers' face. Like, he wanted nothing to do with his wide receivers anymore. He was pissed off that they were even there and that those were his options. And it became the A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones show. Dillon actually led the team with 6 targets, and Aaron Jones was second on the team. He had 5 of his own. There was no wide receiver help pretty much at all. Kind of felt bad for Rodgers, but not really. It's clear that the ground and pound attack is going to continue to be dangerous in Green Bay, and once their O-line gets healthy, it is going to be a force to be reckoned with. Aaron Jones was able to rack up 50 yards almost on just 5 carries. Dillon, however, had 10 carries in this game for 45 yards. So really interesting the amount of touches that A.J. Dillon ended up garnering. He easily out-touched Jones in this one, and that was a little bit surprising to me. Now, I talked about the visible frustration on Rodgers' face. You're going to have that when you finish with under 200 yards passing and a QBR of 16. He averaged just under 6 yards per completion through the air. So like we said, dink and dunk all day from Green Bay. They had no downfield presence, and it made it honestly pretty easy for the Vikings as a defense. Once that threat over the top was rectified, there wasn't a lot of places to go for this Packers offense. Now, I will say that Green Bay, they did move the ball fairly well. They actually had more first downs than Minnesota was able to muster. They had 21 to the Vikings 19. But it was all on short plays, and they had to earn every yard, whereas Minnesota was able to have some of those explosive plays over the top, obviously with Justin Jefferson, that helped change the momentum of this game. Now let's get to the Packers defense. And I am a big proponent of this team overall. I think that the Packers have one of the best defensive units in the league, and they were just outclassed and outplayed in this game. They were able to hang in there. I will give them credit for that. But at the end of the day, they just really did not have an answer for Justin Jefferson, and that is probably going to happen to a lot of teams in 2022. I was a little bit confused and interested that they decided not to even attempt, or at least from my perspective, attempt to shadow Jefferson with Jair Alexander. I'm a firm believer that Jair Alexander is one of the top corners in the entire league. And you would have thought that at least one point or another, they would have thrown it at the wall and saw it stuck because nothing else was working. I think the pre-snap motion that we talked about from Minnesota helped to keep Alexander off of Jefferson. And maybe that's why they decided to go against that route. Now, the Packers were also really good up front. They had 8 hits on Kirk Cousins. They were in his face a lot. Now, they were only able to muster 1 sack from all that pressure, which is credit to Cousins. And I talked about his ability to feel it out in the pocket. But Green Bay was there. They just weren't able to finish that last yard or two to get the sacks. And so, overall, the Packers defense really did not play poorly. Even though you look at the score, it's 23-7. It looks like a slaughter. I'm trying to be as unbiased as I can about this. Green Bay's defense actually played pretty well. Outside of some bombs that they gave up to Jefferson, they just couldn't figure him out. But even with that happening, in the second half, they held the Vikings to just 6 points. Minnesota may have taken their foot off the gas just a little bit, which you don't love to see as a Vikings fan. But for the Packers to be able to hang in after going into half down 17-0 and getting completely wiped, as a Packer fan, you have to have at least some positive outlook from that. Now, hopefully, you can tell that I'm trying not to get too high on my Vikings after this win. I mean, it can't really happen any better than it did for Minnesota in week 1. You get the big win at home. You do it in concise fashion. Leave no doubt against your bitter rivals. But I also am not blind to the fact that Green Bay was missing some offensive linemen. They didn't have their number 1 wide receiver. And there was a couple plays that could have shifted. The Christian Watson play, the goal line stand, if both of those go in Green Bay's favor, this game is maybe a completely different story. So you love to see it. It's a confidence builder for sure. But Minnesota has to keep the pedal to the metal. I would have loved to see them score a touchdown in the second half, maybe 2, and really put it on Green Bay. For the Packers, I don't think there's a reason to panic. Minnesota's offense is really good. I've been saying it all off season. Justin Jefferson is going to demolish many a team. This is not going to be the only time this season where he goes off. So that is going to happen. Outside of that, I think Packers defense played pretty well, and there is no reason to panic in Green Bay. We saw this last year with the Packers lay an egg against the Saints 38-3 in week 1. They will respond. Now, I do think that there has to be a little bit of concern in that wide receiver room, because even when Allen Lazard comes back, I'm not sure how much more he's going to put them over the top. Now, hopefully you get the catch with Watson. The young guys can start to step up, but Randall Cobb, I'm sorry, he's not really a threat underneath. Romeo Doubs was fine for Green Bay, but didn't really impress. So unless Green Bay can get into games where they are dominating on defense, they can run the heck out of the ball and keep it between Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, Green Bay may be in some closer games than they want, at least early on, until that passing game can start to hit its strides. And that's going to do it for the rundown today. Really hope you guys enjoyed the content. If there's any content that you are hoping for, drop that down below. You have any questions, I love to answer them. I try to get to every single comment that is posted. So if you put it down there, you are going to get a reply. I always appreciate a like and a subscribe to the channel. It helps me out so very much. It enables me to do what I love, and that way I can keep bringing you guys the content that you love. This is Relentless Press. I am your host, Abraham Opatz, and we will see you